You could motorboat your way on over to France and deal with all the chaos.
France. Holy crap.
Gosh, dude.
How about...
We have to talk about this.
We do. So, terrorist attack in France.
For doing
everybody willing to
essentially-
say that? Terrorist attack?
yeah,
Okay,
sure.
we have to make sure because of the world that we live in. We don't know if this is terrorism or
Yeah.
not. Maybe it was workplace violence or maybe it was...
Yeah.
Does it involve terror? Terrorism. There you go.
Yeah, well, there you have it.
I mean, the French officials are calling it terror.
So, magazine prints, what was it? It was obscene images of the Prophet Muhammad,
Yeah.
right?
From
Yeah,
what
little,
I understand,
little cartoons.
Cartoons.
They had done a few cartoons, then they had some threats, and then they said, we're going to do whatever we want. And they came out with some pretty intense cartoons after that.
It was like
They've-
pornographic
they've
with
been-
Muhammad.
But they've
right?
been doing this, right?
Oh, no, yeah, they've been doing it for a while. They just, when they got the threats, I think they ramped it up a little bit. But they were already doing stuff that's offensive to everybody. It was offensive.
Right.
They were doing it about Jesus and everybody else. Like, I mean, they were offending everybody equally.
And a guy goes into this, or is it 3 guys, right?
I think it was 3.
What was the
One was
publication?
18, one was early 30s, one was late 20s or something.
They go in there into the office, the people that published this, right? And they went in. What did they have? Because I was confused by this
I had
part.
heard AK-47s
What?
and a rocket launcher.
No. That can't be.
They did pass a law to say you're not allowed to have
Yeah,
those.
those weapons are illegal in France, and so there is no chance that those guys had these weapons.
It's absolutely impossible, I know. Actually, I'm pretty sure that
We
it's...
are being lied to by the media. That is propaganda. Because there's, the government, obviously. Well, their government's not as good as ours, so maybe theirs just hasn't stopped the guns like ours definitely could.
Yeah, of
Well,
course.
Okay. Well, so we can
Yeah.
move past that. Okay, so they had guns, and it was 12 people, right?
Yeah, they executed 12 people.
Okay.
It's horrific.
So I've
And
got to
this-
say, first off,
I was going to say the organization because I was trying to remember. It's Charlie Hebdo or Hebdo, however you say it.
okay, is the name of the publication, is it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Strons, do you remember when we first started Three-Headed Eagle? We got on Twitter, and we had a Twitter account with like 6 followers. And we were just tweeting
upon a
out
time.
random stuff. And Strons tweeted out a quote. And I was like, I don't like that you sent that out.
Ooh, what was this?
Do you remember this?
I remember the conversation, but I don't remember
Okay.
what I said or what the picture was.
It was Voltaire.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And the quote was, I do not agree with all you have said, but I will fight for your right to say it. At the time, I didn't like it because I don't like Voltaire at all. As I've moved along, as I've gotten past that, the more I think about that quote, the more I like it. Because Voltaire said it. Because if I met Voltaire, I could say that to his face and mean it. In fact, I could even double down and say, I don't agree with most that you have said, but I will fight for your right to say it. I don't agree with making pornographic images of Muhammad. I don't agree with insulting anybody's religion or belief. That's not what I do. But it is their right to do it.
Right. And this was essentially, I mean, it was probably beyond what we do, but if you were to take typical political caricatures, even pretty controversial ones, wouldn't you say that that's basically the equivalent of what we do with the spoken word on our podcast?
You mean like
We just called
calling Speaker Boner the talking penis?
like, isn't that the equivalent?
It's taken to an extreme, but it is
But
a
yeah,
similar concept.
They took it to an extreme, but let's be realistic for a second. Like, if you were to just put that on a podcast in spoken word, it's a lot or similar to what we do in our comedy and the way we make fun of politics. Now, we don't intentionally go out to offend, especially on a religious basis. We have the 3 of us, I think, are pretty respectful when it comes to religious conviction and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
So
but like, could you imagine how awful it would be to have the same fate? Jon Stewart, obviously we don't agree with him a lot, but on his show today, he really had some great words, and one of the things he says is, despite like all the frustrations of the politics and and then the debate, he said at least it's a conversation.
Yep.
And he said, and he called it, from like the civilized world.
Now, not everybody in the media is reacting that way. Did you guys hear that there was a reporter, and I wish I'd looked up who it was, but I only heard about this on the way over. He said, well, you get some of this from every religion, such as, and as soon as he said it, I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. He brought up a court case, which somehow, that should stop you right there and go, well, how is a court case the same as killing 12 people? It's not at all. But this is where he was comparing. He said there was a court case, a guy by the name of Jerry Falwell, who founded Liberty University. So you might guess that a guy with a legal studies degree from Liberty's probably heard of this case. Sued Hustler magazine because they wrote a letter, kind of like who the freak was that? Kanye West. They wrote the article.
Letter, yeah.
That Adam read a magazine article that was a fake letter from Kanye West. Well, this was a fake letter from Jerry Falwell describing how he lost his virginity to his mom in an outhouse. And they wrote that and they signed it, Jerry Falwell. Mm-hmm. Right? Jerry Falwell's a televangelist he's been dead for a little while, so there's a lot of people probably listening who don't even know who he was. He was a televangelist. He was a Baptist, started a Christian university, Liberty University. And he sued and he won. And then Hustler magazine appealed. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said they've got the right to do it. And this is where the doctrine
because they sued for slander, didn't he?
Yeah. And they said this is where the doctrine of, well, if you're in the public eye, you can be made fun of and people can do basically whatever they want to you.
Because your life is so public that people can easily discredit the...
Well, and that was the other part of it, was that if people can look at it and know that it's a joke, then it doesn't count as slander. Anyway, but that was this reporter. That was what he said. Well, you get this from every religion because this guy sued somebody over free speech. Yeah, he freaking sued. He didn't shoot. He didn't go to Hustler magazine and kill 12 people. So, no, whoever moron you are, that I can't... You know what? You're not even worthy to have your name spoken on my show, so I'm glad I don't know it. But...
Your show?
It's a third mind, okay?
I don't like that you said that.
Well, shoot me then. But anyway. So... But no, okay, stupid. Not the same. Not even close.
No, this is a tragedy, and I think it's sad. I think...
it's appalling.
It is,
You have a publication, no matter what you think about what they're doing, whether you think it's funny or despicable or whatever, they're making cartoons, and people lost their life
for drawings,
for doodles on a page.
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay, so if the Muhammad that you believe in would tell you to do those things, then your Muhammad is a terrorist and a dirtbag and the most despicable person who's ever lived. Mm-hmm. If your Muhammad is telling you to go shoot 12 people because they drew cartoons.
Yeah.
And that's why you're like, oh, we try and, not offend, other religions and whatever. It's like, yeah, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but
leave people alone.
Just like if your God or your Jesus or your Buddha is telling you to go murder people, or to, if other people leave your religion, then you can kill them, those kind of things. No.
Right.
I have no respect for any religion that says to do anything like that.
And the thing is I've heard people bring up, well, the Christians had their crusades. And I've never spoken to a Christian that was like, yeah, I wish we'd start those up again. You know what I mean? Like I think it's pretty general. It's especially in the U.S. If you were to say, hey, what do you think about what the Christians did during the Crusades? Most people probably don't know much about it. Like I could probably learn a lot more about the Crusades, but in general, from what I've learned, I don't think it was very just.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
So, but I wouldn't want that to happen again. I think that's kind of a black eye on the Christian history.
But when you look at history, right? A lot of times in the past, we'll talk about like the dark ages. Why were they, dark? They weren't like the bright and sunny ages, okay? or like these barbaric tribes or groups. It was very like barbaric and people even as little as like 300 years ago, you had people being just executed in the streets, from mobs, and you still have that kind of stuff, right? But we as a society, or at least in the U.S. or other parts of the world, the Western societies have advanced, right? And we've liked to think that we're enlightened, and we went through all these great transformations, and we think about things that we're much more peaceful now, and that is absolutely true. And it's like we look at the rest of the world, and it's like if they're being barbaric, you have to call them out for it. Mm-hmm. You can't just say, "Oh, well, that's just like like one nutcase," because it's not just one guy. This keeps happening. And there's people who support these people, whether they would do it or not, but other members of that religion saying, well, I might not do it, but I understand.
If we had today's society, if we had World War II happening today, there would be a big group of people going, no, listen, guys, listen. The Nazis that want to kill all the Jews is a very small percentage of Nazis. That's not what they're all about. Mostly they're just, about socialism and peace and love and happiness in Germany. That's what we would get today. If you took that event and put it in today's time, that's the kind of crap that we would be hearing.
I've heard people say that.
Yeah.
For crying out loud. How much more right can I be?
But the thing is I think what's most important and what makes the biggest impact is when people within, maybe not directly within those circles, but within kind of those outer circles, condemn the actions of others. Like, you went to some of Beck's big rallies. Mm-hmm. And there were, every once in a while, one or two or three or four, whatever, a handful of people who came with the wrong intentions.
At Beck's rallies?
Well, they were fringe. You're talking 500,000 people. There had to have been one or two with bad intentions.
There were 0 arrests. We know that.
But the thing is mostly it was because people were like, hey, that's not a good idea. It happened internally. That's why you didn't hear much about it. And
or you have somebody who maybe didn't do anything but had a racist thought or something, right? That's certainly possible.
I never met them.
No.
We're assuming they exist.
Right. But I'm just saying,
but I have no
even
evidence
in every
that they
peaceful rally that we've seen, when there are outliers, they get pointed out by the media, especially if they're conservative or small government people. But they're typically, nothing happens. There's no arrests. There's no violence because it gets shut down by the group internally. There are good people in the kind of in the current civil rights movement that are condemning violence since those police officers were executed. Mm-hmm. That's the best way to really combat this, is to look inside your own movement and say, this isn't right. Mm-hmm. And there are some really, I'd have to look up some of their names, but there are a handful of Muslims that are actively working to reduce or to increase the outspoken nature of going against terrorism. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good. I think we need to be willing to reach out to moderate Muslims or reformed Muslims or just nonviolent Muslims that are willing to hold hand in hand with us, and definitely not ostracize them, but give them a chance to feel comfortable speaking out against this kind of violence, because it's got to stop. There was the prime. Is he a prime minister of Egypt? The current one, or is he a president?
Is who? Oh, in Egypt is the position. Egypt, yeah. Oh, you know what? I don't know. I think it's prime minister. I don't know though. I don't know for sure.
I'd have to look this up, but Mark Levin was talking about it, and he said that he gave a speech a couple of weeks ago where he talked about how, the Muslim community cannot continue making, I think he used like the term anxiety, creating anxiety for the rest of the world, because it's not going to benefit the Muslim community. Mm-hmm. And Mark Levin pointed out the fact that nobody's talked about it. Nobody's mentioned that one of the major countries in the Middle East who swayed back and forth, who was part of the, the big, what do they call it, the Arab Spring and everything, and the Muslim Brotherhood and all that. Now the leader of that country is coming out and saying, if we continue to cause anxiety to the rest of the world because of our religious beliefs, we will ruin us. And that's a really big deal, and we should be thanking him, even if you don't agree with him on 90% of the stuff. What he said there, if that's what he said, and I can look it up and verify, yes, that's great. I want to talk about it. I want people to know that those kind of people exist out there, and they're Muslim, and they're peace-loving, and they want what's best for the world as a whole. And I think that's great, and we just need to talk about it and not just say, well, everyone over there is a terrorist and all that. But we need to say, these guys are terrorists. And it would be easier to identify them if people like this leader in Egypt says, yep, I agree with you. Those guys right there are terrorists.
Yep.
Then we'd be able to say, okay, now we know who we're fighting.
Well said, Adam.
I'm just saying as all.
That was a high quality rant, and I appreciate it.
No
I want you to
problem.
know that.
Well, and
No. You can't follow that rant. What are you trying to do?
I'm going to follow up.
All right. He thinks he can top you.
No, I can't.
Sorry. Go ahead.
It is more and more apparent and obvious how important the separation between church and state is. And yes, that is not in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, but that idea and that concept, because there are Christians in America who think that, well, if our government were just more religious and more moral, it would fix everything, because it could dictate morality to all these people, and it would fix all of our problems, and it would be perfect. And if we could transfer that to the whole world, we'd all live in happy harmony. Just like there are Muslims who think that if everyone just followed Sharia law, there'd be no problems. We wouldn't have to shoot these people. We wouldn't have to blow up these buildings because everyone would be following the law, and it'd be great. But the problem is that religion is a personal choice, and you can't dictate it, and you can't conform somebody to your morality, because it will never ever work, because it is inherent to the person, right? And so you have to have that separation. You can't have governing bodies dictating that religion or morality. And people, we've talked about it. Talk about the founding fathers being Christian or grounded in their spiritual faith and belief, right? But even they, I don't think would argue. They didn't want, right, a government sponsored religion. Mm-hmm. They may have been personally religious or not, but it's again their personal choice, and that is so important. And anyone, whether they're Christian, Muslim, whatever, arguing for some kind of a rule of law that is founded on a scripture or philosophy or whatever, right? That's religious. You can't follow that, because it just doesn't work. And this kind of stuff it really upsets me when you have these religious nuts from whatever religion doing terrible things to people for drawing cartoons, mm-hmm. or saying silly jokes, or even taking a hard stance and being extremely offensive. So what? Be offended and get over it. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to convince everyone else to stop doing it by killing people. Mm-hmm. I've seen people, it's like, now people are like, you know what? Everyone should just draw Muhammad. Uh-huh. Everyone should just draw him, because
the whole world.
Just everybody just draw Muhammad, because if that's what pisses him off, good, just keep doing it. And I don't know if that's the right solution or not, but it's certainly interesting to think about.
Yeah. But
I understand the concept of it. Them going, oh, okay, you want to kill other people because they draw Muhammad? Well, then that's what we all do. And it's essentially the same concept of if they come after the Jews, I'm a Jew. If they come after the Christians, I'm a Christian. It's just we just stand together. I can't stand with them on the act, though, because I think what they did was stupid and not right.
Yeah, it was
frankly,
offensive and rude.
But they've got the right to not be right. If they want to be offensive and rude, you've got the right to be offensive and rude. You also have the right to not buy their publication.
Right.
Nobody forced it into anybody's face. Now, if somebody, I don't know, if somebody came in and plastered my walls with images of Muhammad, then it would be like, okay, well, now all of a sudden this is my business. But if I don't have to look at your stupid magazine, then do what you want with your magazine. So, I had to follow up on one other thing. You guys are both leaning into your microphone, so I apologize for cutting you both off. But separation of church and state is in the Constitution, just not the phrase. It does say Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, which is basically what you said. We don't have a state-sponsored religion. We don't force you to worship. We don't say you can't worship. That's the two things we do.
And I think what people should realize in context is, if you think about it, a lot of the colonies just prior to the Revolution, probably within the lifetime of the parents of most of the founding fathers, had actual state religions. Mm-hmm. When the Quakers got here, their settlements were Quaker settlements. You had to be a Quaker. Puritans, you had to be a Puritan. And some of those settlements, many of them, had death penalties for adultery, and things like that. So they came from knowing, oh gosh, my great uncle was killed because he had a drinking problem, and and he did all this stuff, but he was put on death row for being an idiot.
Do you know what else they had a death penalty for?
What's that?
The Puritan establishment in Boston had a death penalty for slavery.
Yeah, that's
true. You know that? Yeah. First slave boat everybody knows about, but we don't hear about the second slave boat in the history books because it pulled into Boston. They set all the slaves free and put the ship owner to death. So they said, slavery's illegal here. You broke our law.
Good.
You don't get that in the history books because, of course, we're all slave owners and racists and all that kind of thing. But